Have you been encouraged back to work after a few years of working at home? Have you found an impact on your organisational relationships and friendships at work as a result of hybrid working? My name's Rachel Morrison. I'm an Associate Professor at AUT and I research work and wellbeing. This is Modern Working Matters. Okay, so here's a really interesting question. COVID made working from home a reality for many workers, but now there seems to be a move against working from home. Why? So there are lots of really good reasons to be at work. Some workers need to be at work to do their job, so you can't really be a remote butcher or a remote surgeon. And learning on the job is a really important element of becoming an organisational insider. So working alongside others, seeing experienced people do their job well is a really good way of learning how to do your job. That said, there aren't any really good reasons, if you work in an office, to be at work all the time. There's a lot of pressure from some organisations to encourage people back to work, and a lot of that is around trust, where you've got managers who don't believe that their employees are working as hard as they could if they can't be seen. Interestingly, there's really good research that shows that motivated, inspired, engaged employees will work well wherever they are, and by the same token, if you've got a disengaged, quiet quitter, they're going to do that whether they're at work or at home. So what's the answer? Designing meaningful work and valuing results over being present is the best way to get productivity out of your employees. Okay, so here's another question. What are the pitfalls of hybrid working? Well, one of the problems with not being present at work is out of sight, out of mind. There is some evidence that if you work remotely too often, you don't get the same promotion opportunities, you may miss out on professional development opportunities, and people can feel genuinely isolated if they don't have any relationships or collegial contact with their peers. Work-life balance, there's very few people that wouldn't really benefit from not having to have a commute and being able to put a load of washing on while they're at home, which really helps with managing work and home. But by the same token, if you're always working at home, you kind of are always on and you never really get a break from work. So you can have really negative work-life balance outcomes if you're constantly working at home also. I think another really important thing is the notion of equity. For some people, working at home means a home office and 2 screens and plenty of Wi-Fi, but for other people, working at home might be some toddlers and flatmates and working on a kitchen bench, and it could be really difficult. Here's an interesting one. If you're given a choice between working in an office or in an open plan workspace, what do you choose and why? Always an office. There's abundant, rigorous empirical research which tells us that working in open plan spaces, particularly if you don't have your own desk, is associated with negative health, wellbeing and productivity outcomes. Some of this can be offset if you have the opportunity to work hybrid, but if you're given the choice, choose an office. Open plan seems to be the default for most offices. Is it just a way for organisations to save money? Yep, it does save money, but this could mean running organisations more effectively and perhaps saving jobs. This is a biggie. Does everyone benefit from hybrid working? So while pretty much everyone will benefit from increased flexibility, more choices in how and where they work, the benefit of hybrid working is not the same for everybody. So not everybody has the same social load at work. For example, ethnic minorities, people who are neurodivergent, women will experience a workplace quite differently than other people. So I did some research a few years ago on a law firm, and what we found was when all of these workers moved into an open plan space and were reflecting on their experience of it, the female employees used a lot of language like being monitored, observed, watched, and those types of words were almost completely absent in the responses from my male employees, from the male workers in this firm. So the workers weren't necessarily saying that this was a negative experience. These women weren't saying that they didn't like being watched, but it's worth noting that they really noticed it, that they really felt observed. And I think this is partly because from childhood, women and girls are assessed on their appearance in a way that men just aren't. So really experience those spaces in a really different manner. And there's been some research just this year that's come out which has shown that women, particularly young women, experience a lot of everyday sexism in workplaces, and this can be really alleviated by the opportunity to work remotely. And then another study in an American context which found that people from ethnic minorities, the negative impact of bias was much reduced for people that could work in a hybrid manner. Please look at the show notes if you want some more information on that. So for this question, someone has said, I work with my best friend, but it can feel complicated in the office. Is this normal? So it's really interesting working with people who you're also quite close friends with, because friendships and collegial relationships have quite different rules which dictate how we engage with these people. And this kind of can become a problem in a few different ways. So for example, favouritism. We expect people at work to treat everybody fairly and not to have nepotism and not to show favouritism. But we expect our friends to treat us as special, otherwise they're just another colleague. So this can create a real tension where you don't quite know how you should be treating your friend or whether you should be, offering them special favours in this workplace context. Another way that friendships and collegial relationships can be different is around what we tell each other. So there are often expectations of confidentiality in workplaces, particularly, for example, for lawyers and doctors. But we also have an expectation that we'll tell our friends everything and that our friends will tell us what is important and things that we kind of want to know. So again, people can feel this real conflict around what they should be and shouldn't be sharing with their friends. Another way that friendships and collegial relationships are different is around judgment. So there are lots of times at work where you sort of have to evaluate other people at work. So performance evaluations, promotion applications, reviewing each other's work, and that kind of harsh judgment can feel really wrong when it's applied to a really close friend at work. So yeah, it can be really difficult to manage those friendships which also take place at work. Is hot desking still a thing? It is. Unassigned seating is becoming ubiquitous. More and more organisations are moving towards this type of work arrangement. And unfortunately, it is the worst of all work arrangements. So not only do you have a situation where you perhaps don't know where you're going to be sitting and with whom, which can be really unsettling for some people. There are people that really require some predictability in their work, so that can be really upsetting. For others who perhaps sensitive about germs, sharing equipment and sharing desks can be a really uncomfortable experience. And not only that, we can't personalise our space when we're sharing it with others. We can't have pictures of our children or our particular special mug. So that can make a workplace seem quite sterile and you're no longer kind of at home at work. So unassigned seating is a tricky situation to manage for a lot of workers. My colleague talks too much and too loudly in our open plan space. What can I do to change this? This is a common complaint, and there are a few things that you can do. I think one of the important things is around having good design. So having rooms or spaces which have silence norms, opportunities for people to talk loudly and have meetings in enclosed spaces, norms around using headphones where possible, and even using headphones as a door. So in a way, using a set of headphones to signal that you're not available to engage in conversations can work really well. This person's asked, what are the challenges for neurodivergent employees when it comes to open plan workspaces? Well, pretty much all of the issues we've discussed are exactly the same, but often just worse for neurodivergent employees. So if you're someone that quite likes a bit of routine, for someone on the autistic spectrum, they will require predictability and routine. If you're someone that's distracted quite easily, if someone is ADHD, then they actually can't work if they've got distraction in their visual field. So the advice from designers is really to make sure that we design to the highest common denominator, have a really high bar, because if it suits neurodivergent workers, it's really going to suit everyone. Okay, so is there evidence that biophilia, having elements of nature in the workplace, actually works? Yep, there really is. So being able to see plants, see trees out your window, even having rocks and water features in a workplace has really measurable impact on stress, well-being and productivity. Here's $1 million question. What's the key to being productive at work? The short answer is fit. The feeling that we are well suited to our work and well suited to our work environment. So for example, do you have a workspace that is well matched to the types of tasks that you do? Do you have the equipment to do your job? Do you feel that the organisation's personality and values are a good fit to your own personality and values? Do you feel that the skills and abilities and training that you have are a perfect fit to the demands of your job? And do you have autonomy? Can you change the way that you work and the order you do things to suit yourself? That element of fit is probably the most important thing in terms of productivity, wellbeing and motivation. Okay, so here's an interesting one. Is it true that women are better managers? No, but it is true that people with higher levels of social sensitivity, people that can, emotionally read others, people that can read cues, generally are better at managing others. And it is also true that, in general, women tend to have these skills slightly more than men. So, for example, when women run and manage meetings, there is findings that people have better equity in their conversational turn-taking, that decisions are better, that people are more likely to reach consensus and be happy with the decision at the end. So interruptions are kind of reduced, and it's true that women are interrupted far more than men by both men and women. So being able to manage that process is a really important one in terms of getting the best out of everyone. Here's one. I'm a manager of a big productive hybrid team. How do I get them to come to work more? So having norms and expectations around particular anchor days when a lot of people are expected to be at work is quite a good idea. What I will say though is that there needs to still be a reason for people to come to work. So having an expectation that people come to work, say, on a Wednesday is excellent so long as there is perhaps a meeting or some collaborative work opportunities or some tasks that need collaboration that are achieved on that day. Otherwise it just becomes another element of presenteeism. So thanks for all your questions. I hope you found this information useful, and for more information, go to the show notes. This has been Modern Work Matters.